if the sun comes up tomorrow, let her be.
Why would anyone be murdered in the middle of a song? That's the question everyone is asking in Buckeye Lake, Ohio. Not just because of how it happened, but when it was a normal Friday night, July 11th, 2025. The kind of night locals at Louis' Corner House knew well. Beer, laughter, familiar faces. And at the center of it all, Benjamin Hawk, a father, a friend, a karaoke regular with a stage name and a voice that filled the room. He wasn't famous, but to those who knew him, he was unforgettable. So why is he dead? Why did someone walk into that bar, wait for him to take the mic, and then, just as he started singing Linkin Park's One More Light, pull the trigger? No argument, no confrontation, no warning, just a gunshot to the back of the head. Why was Richard Lindgren, a 59-year-old man from Thornville, standing behind him? Why did he fire that shot? And why was that song? That moment? Could it really have been about jealousy? According to investigators, Lindgren was the ex-husband of the woman Benjamin was dating. Is that all it took? A bruised ego? A fragile man unable to move on? Or was this something deeper? Something more dangerous than anyone had seen coming? Witnesses say there were signs. One DJ remembers warning Lindgren weeks earlier to stop harassing his ex-wife at karaoke events. Was this a pattern? Did anyone take it seriously? And why didn't Benjamin see it coming? Within hours of the shooting, Lindgren vanished. A statewide manhunt turned into a multi-state pursuit, all the way to South Carolina. What was his plan? Did he think he could outrun the law? Or did he simply not care? By the time police caught up with him, it was too late for Benjamin. A father of two, a man with a voice and a presence in his small town, was gone, dead, on stage, while singing. Now a grieving community is left to pick up the pieces, replaying that night over and over. Could this have been stopped? Was this preventable? And what happens next? This is not a story about fame or fortune. It's about rage. It's about control. And it's about a man who never got to finish his song. Stay with us, because what happened next will leave you speechless. Why did a smiling, beloved father, armed only with a microphone, die in cold blood on stage? This isn't just tragedy. It's a mystery, a brutal, unprovoked killing in a place filled with song and laughter. And at the heart of that mystery is one man, Benjamin Donkey Hawk. He wasn't a celebrity. He wasn't famous. But to the community in Buckeye Lake, Ohio, Ben was unforgettable. A father, a friend, a voice. People knew him as the guy who could light up a karaoke night, the man who could turn a song into an experience. According to the IKF Karaoke Cup, Ohio, Benjamin had the voice of an angel and never met a stranger, just people that didn't know they were friends yet. But who was he really behind the mic? He wasn't just a regular at Louis' Corner House. He was a presence. When Ben sang, he wasn't just hitting notes. He was telling stories. His brother, David Hawk, said Ben used karaoke to share emotions with the people around him. He connected through music. It was never just a hobby. It was a form of truth. And then there were his daughters, two young girls now left behind without their dad. A GoFundMe page created after his murder describes Ben as someone who would give his very last to someone in need. He was the kind of person who looked out for others before himself. Who could have imagined that a man like that would be the one to fall to such senseless violence? On the night of July 11th, 2025, Ben stepped onto the stage to sing Linkin Park's One More Light. Why that song? It's not a party anthem. It's not a victory cry. It's a ballad about loss, about asking whether someone's light still matters after it's gone. Did he choose that song randomly? Or was it a reflection of something deeper, something unspoken? That was the moment. That was the performance. And that was when everything changed. Witnesses say Ben was performing beautifully, as usual. The crowd was engaged. The DJ, Robert Humble, stood just 4 feet away. But no one saw what was coming. Without warning, a man named Richard Lindgren entered the bar. No argument. No confrontation. He walked in, stood behind Benjamin, and pulled the trigger. One bullet to the back of the head. Just like that, the music stopped. Who does something like that? Why would anyone fire a shot into the head of a man singing on stage, without saying a word, The shooter, 59-year-old Lindgren, was reportedly the ex-husband of the woman Benjamin was dating. That's the detail that changed everything. Jealousy, rage, a toxic past. Investigators believe Lindgren was driven by resentment over Ben's relationship with his former wife. But is that all it was? Just jealousy? Or was there something deeper, something boiling beneath the surface for weeks or months before that fatal moment? 2 weeks before the murder, DJ Robert Humble reportedly warned Lindgren to stop verbally harassing his ex-wife at karaoke events. Was this a pattern? Was Lindgren's anger growing, and no one realized how far he would take it? Did Benjamin even know the danger he was in? That night, everyone, including Ben, his girlfriend, and Lindgren, had been inside the same bar earlier. They'd even sat near one another. It seemed peaceful. No shouting, no visible signs of tension. But how often does a killer broadcast his next move? Hawk's warmth may have been the very thing that made him a target. To a jealous ex, watching his former partner move on with someone as kind, generous, and beloved as Benjamin Hawk, it could have been unbearable. Was Lindgren threatened not just by the relationship, but by Ben's goodness? By the fact that people loved him? When the bullet ended Ben's life, it didn't just take down a karaoke singer. It took a father from his daughters. It ripped a man out of a community that adored him. And it left witnesses and friends stunned, traumatized, and asking questions they still can't answer. What was going through Ben's mind in those final seconds? Did he feel the presence behind him? Did he even have time to turn around? Was the last thing he heard his own voice or the gasps from the crowd when it was already too late? And what about the people watching? The girlfriend seated nearby? The DJ 4 feet away? The patrons who came for a drink and a song and left with a memory they'll never shake? There's no doubt Benjamin Hawk left a mark. But is that why he died? The killer walked out, just like that. No words, no panic, as if he believed that what he'd done made sense. And now a small town is left with echoes of a voice that won't come back, of songs that will never be sung again. Friends gather to remember the man who made karaoke nights worth showing up for. A GoFundMe grows not just with money, but with comments full of grief, confusion, and love. And 2 little girls are left asking why. Why their dad? Why that night? Why didn't someone stop it? Could someone have stopped it? Did anyone try? As we move forward, the questions only deepen. In Chapter 3, we step into the life of Richard Lindgren, the man who pulled the trigger. Who was he? What history does he carry? And what kind of mind watches a man sing a song about the fragility of life and decides to end his? Stay with us, because we're just getting started. How much does jealousy have to fester before it turns deadly? What does it take for someone to walk into a crowded karaoke bar, raise a gun behind an unsuspecting man, and pull the trigger while music is still playing? Who is the man capable of that kind of cold, calculated violence? His name is Richard Lindgren. He's 59 years old, and on the night of July 11th, 2025, he became a central figure in one of the most shocking small-town murders in recent memory. Just an hour before the shooting, Lindgren's ex-wife had arrived at Louie's corner house in Buckeye Lake, Ohio, with her new boyfriend, Benjamin Hawk. They weren't hiding. They were there to sing, laugh, and enjoy a night of music and community. But at some point, Lindgren walked in and saw them together. No argument was reported. No shouts. No confrontation. Instead, witnesses say he waited, then approached Ben from behind while he was mid-song, performing Linkin Park's One More Light. Without a word, Lindgren pulled out a handgun and fired a single bullet into the back of Ben's head. The entire bar erupted into chaos. But the shooter? He walked out. Why? What could have driven such a deliberate act? Was it really just jealousy? And if so, how long had it been brewing? This wasn't the first time Lindgren's behavior had raised red flags. According to DJ Robert Humble, who witnessed the shooting from just a few feet away, Lindgren had been verbally harassing his ex-wife at previous karaoke events. Less than 2 weeks before the killing, Humble had warned him, if the harassment continued, he wouldn't be welcome back. So why didn't anyone escalate the warning? Was this a tragedy waiting to happen? Was this a tragedy waiting to happen? It's now known that Lindgren had violated a protection order earlier in the year. So why wasn't he already facing stricter legal consequences? Why wasn't more being done to monitor his actions or protect the woman he had previously intimidated? Was the system asleep at the wheel? When he fired that shot, was it a moment of impulse or the climax of months of simmering rage? The reality is chilling. Lindgren entered a bar where people were celebrating life, love, and music, and made the decision to end someone's life in front of a crowd. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He didn't flinch. He executed a man who was doing nothing more than singing. And then he disappeared. A statewide manhunt launched within hours. Law enforcement quickly expanded the search across state lines. Less than 24 hours after the shooting, Lindgren was tracked through traffic cameras and captured in Orangeburg County, South Carolina, during a traffic stop on I-26. He was driving a cream-colored Buick Lucerne, and deputies had been tipped off to his route. Did he think he could outrun justice? Did he have a plan? Was he headed to hide out with someone? Or was he simply running blindly? Following his arrest, detectives from Ohio traveled to South Carolina to begin the extradition process. Lindgren was held in custody pending return to Lincoln County, where he now faces a murder charge. A judge set his bond at $5 million, a staggering number that reflects the gravity of the crime. What comes next? Prosecutors will argue their case. They'll likely point to Lindgren's past behavior, the protection order, the verbal harassment, the timeline, and the execution-style murder caught by eyewitnesses. All signs point to premeditation. But what will Lindgren say in his defense? Will he claim he snapped? Will his legal team argue mental instability? Will he deny intent or try to reframe the narrative? And what about his ex-wife, the woman who had finally moved on with her life? How does she process the fact that her new partner was killed in front of her, allegedly by the man she thought was in the past? Was enough done to keep her and Ben safe? This is where the story becomes a test of justice, not just in a courtroom, but in the hearts and minds of a community that failed to stop something it may have seen coming. What did we miss? What can we learn from a man like Richard Lindgren, a person who reportedly went from shouting at his ex in public to silently executing her partner without hesitation? In the next chapter, we'll examine the early court proceedings, the legal strategies taking shape, and the mounting pressure from a community that wants answers. Because someone needs to answer for the silence before the gunshot, and someone needs to be held responsible for the life that ended with a song. Richard Lindgren was arrested on Saturday, July 12, 2025, just one day after the killing of Benjamin Hawk at Louis' Corner House in Buckeye Lake, Ohio. The arrest took place over 500 miles away in Orangeburg County, South Carolina, where deputies apprehended him during a traffic stop on Interstate 26. Investigators say they were able to track his cream-colored Buick Lucerne using highway traffic cameras. The arrest was peaceful. He did not resist. Authorities had issued a nationwide warrant, describing Lindgren as armed and dangerous. The manhunt was swift, and coordinated efforts between Ohio and South Carolina law enforcement made clear. This case was not going to sit quietly. Following his arrest, Lindgren was held in a South Carolina jail while awaiting extradition to Ohio. Upon his return to Lincoln County, Lindgren appeared in court for an initial arraignment. During that appearance, he was formally charged with murder. The judge set his bond at a staggering $5 million, an amount that reflects the gravity of the accusation, his flight risk, and the public safety concerns surrounding the crime. So far, there has been no plea entered and no public statement from his defense. His legal representation has not yet been identified in media reports. While speculation has surfaced about potential motives, particularly jealousy, as Benjamin Hawk was dating Lindgren's ex-wife, prosecutors have not released detailed evidence yet. No court documents or sworn testimony have been presented outlining intent or planning. However, some early statements suggest that Lindgren may have been angered by the presence of Hawk and his ex-wife together at the bar. The next legal step is a grand jury hearing, which is expected to convene on Tuesday, July 23, 2025. This session will determine whether there is sufficient evidence to formally indict Lindgren on one or more felony charges, including murder. It is possible that new charges or enhancements, such as aggravated murder or firearm-related offenses, could emerge from that proceeding. Until then, all statements remain preliminary. Witnesses, including DJ Robert Humble, have reportedly provided information to law enforcement, including past warnings about Lindgren's alleged harassment of his ex-wife at karaoke events. Whether these prior incidents are admissible or relevant to formal charges will be up to prosecutors and the court. At this moment, the justice process is only beginning. There is no trial, no defense narrative, no evidence publicly disclosed beyond the fact that Benjamin Hawk was fatally shot in the back of the head while performing karaoke, and Richard Lindgren was apprehended in connection with that shooting. For now, the legal focus is on containment procedure and preparing for the grand jury. The public waits to learn what prosecutors will present. Families wait for accountability, and the community waits for clarity. The courtroom drama hasn't begun, but it will. It's been more than a week since Louie's corner house, once filled with laughter and karaoke melodies, became a silent crime scene. Since that single gunshot echoed through the beer garden, Buckeye Lake has been grappling with grief, shock, and hard questions. Questions no one can answer just yet. On Thursday night, a vigil brought together community members and family under dim bar lights and summer air heavy with sorrow. More than 50 people, friends, neighbors, and strangers, stood in solidarity. Each held a candle. Each shared a memory. Each shed tears for someone who had lit up karaoke nights. Benjamin Donkey Hawk, a 42-year-old father of two, taken far too soon while singing Linkin Park's One More Light. Candlelight flickered across faces etched with pain, voices choked with emotion. Benjamin was loved by many. He would give his last for someone in need, said his brother David, through tears, when describing the man known for his compassion, kindness, and open heart. He spoke of his brother's daughters, left without a father. His words were simple, but they captured the profound loss felt by many. Others spoke of Ben, the performer, an emotional conduit through song. A friend recalled how, when Ben sang, he reached inside your heart and pulled out something you didn't even know was there. Every lyric, every note, carried years of hopes, heartbreaks, joys, and weeping. Except on July 11th, that voice was silenced. There was silence afterward. No applause. No encore. Just grief. That same evening, a GoFundMe campaign launched, with a goal of $4,165 to cover funeral expenses and support his daughters. In just days, nearly 70 donations poured in. Veteran karaoke singer David Hawk wrote, "He leaves behind two young daughters. We need money to lay him to rest properly, and any leftover money will be given to my nieces to help with anything they may need." The fundraiser became both reverent memorial and practical lifeline. Word spread that the community's pain wouldn't be confined to one vigil. In Newark, Ohio, where Ben had frequently performed, another bar hosted a tribute night. Patrons said they were singing in his honor to keep his light alive. Video footage showed people clutching mics and trembling under emotion as they performed Ben's favorite songs. At Louie's corner house, the scene could not have been more different. That bar, open since 1976, has never seen anything like it, said owner Debbie Williamson. "I just feel bad so many people had to watch this unfold," she said, and described the grief written on faces around her. Patrons and staff spoke of a massive shift in atmosphere, an old familiar spot now writ with memory of tragedy. Mayor Linda Goodman echoed those sentiments. "Buckeye Lake is typically safe," she said. "This is very unusual, not a typical thing to happen in our village," she added, promising enhanced vigilance. But what specific measures could prevent a recurrence? That remains open. Among the stunned was local media. Coverage across outlets highlighted two memories: Ben's warm presence and Lindgren's chilling calm. The manhunt, the arrest in South Carolina, the $5 million bond, all are well-known facts. Yet, beneath the procedural updates, a deeper conversation has started about mental health, intimate partner dynamics, and small-town safety nets. Central voices in this conversation include DJ Robert Humble. He's still carrying what he saw and what he didn't prevent. Humble had warned Lindgren weeks before, telling him that degrading his ex-wife at karaoke was unacceptable. He believed Lindgren stayed his hand out of respect. What he didn't know, respect would never be enough to stop a bullet. Humble remembers Ben arriving with his girlfriend. They embraced, laughed, and took the mic. He saw them together. He saw Lindgren arrive alone. No shouting, no confrontation, just three people in a bar. Minutes later, a shot. Humble's memory echoes across a town still reeling. He just walked and shot him and walked out. 7 words that replay in minds and echo in a justice system now faced with proving motive and how to stop that shot from ever happening. Neighbors are asking whether the protection order issued earlier this year was being enforced. Was Lindgren monitored? Was he ordered to surrender firearms? Records show it was violated. But how did that translate into action? If at all, could law enforcement have prevented Ben's death? Or was this tragedy always too sudden? Beyond systems, there's a generational ripple. Benjamin's daughters, barely old enough to remember much, yet old enough to understand the news. They will grow up with the story of their father's death etched into their identity. Stories from friends will keep memory alive and pain close. What responsibilities fall on benefactors of the GoFundMe? Can financial support give them what cold law cannot? Safety, education, perhaps closure? Will those dollars become a foundation or a reminder of what was lost? Meanwhile, the legal process moves forward, even as people mourn. Lindgren remains in custody. His $5 million bond is a reflection of both his flight risk and the community's desire for accountability. He is waiting as all await. Witnesses, prosecutors readying evidence, a grand jury due next week, and possibly a trial many months from now. But for Buckeye Lake, the trial isn't happening in a courtroom. It's happening every day in living rooms, bars, and street corners. It's happening in the silence that fills every karaoke night. Each time the mic is passed, the memory of July 11th returns. Will the justice system treat this as a murder, premeditated and cold, or something else? And what does that mean for his ex-wife, for Ben's girls, for a community where music and warmth were once enough? These are the questions confronting Buckeye Lake. Could Ben's death have been prevented? Are protection orders enough without enforcing consequences? Do warning signs like verbal harassment demand serious response? What can small towns do to safeguard future karaoke nights? Those questions might be debated in court soon, but they'll be answered in kitchens, bars, and parks far longer than statutes allow. The music stopped just days ago. On the night of July 11, 2025, in a crowded Buckeye Lake bar, Benjamin Hawk was singing when a bullet ended everything. It wasn't long ago. It wasn't something time has healed. The air in Louie's corner house still carries the sound of his voice. The echo of the gunshot still haunts those who heard it. And for his family, friends, and community, the pain is raw, immediate, fresh, and heavy. No one has adjusted to this loss. There hasn't been time. There are still drinks left unfinished on the table where he last sat. There are still playlists queued up with his name on them. And there are still unanswered questions gripping the minds of everyone who loved him, saw him, or simply heard about the murder that took place in plain sight under soft bar lights, while a man poured his soul into a song. Benjamin Hawk was 42 years old. He had 2 daughters. He sang to express something deeper than words. Regulars at the bar called him Donkey, a nickname that stuck over years of karaoke and comfort. He wasn't a superstar, but he was magnetic. If you didn't know his name, you knew his voice. You'd have remembered him for the way he smiled before he sang, or how he made space for new performers at open mic nights. He was someone who lit up the room, not because he tried, but because he cared. Just days ago, he was on stage singing Linkin Park's One More Light, a song about loss, about the value of a life even after it's gone. He wasn't singing to mourn anyone. He was singing to share a moment. And, in a flash, that moment became his last. He didn't know Richard Lindgren was behind him. No one did. No argument. No shouting. Just one shot. And everything changed. The community didn't wait to mourn. Vigils were held almost immediately. Friends and neighbors gathered with candles outside Louie's, some weeping, some silent, all shaken. The air was still heavy with disbelief. There were no long speeches, just fragments of memory, hugs, and the quiet ache of a neighborhood trying to process the unthinkable. In the days that followed, the local karaoke community organized tribute nights. At bars in Buckeye Lake, Newark, and Hebron, people gathered not to celebrate, but to grieve together. They sang his favorite songs. They wore his favorite colors. They shared videos of him on stage. Some couldn't finish their songs. Some cried between verses. Others stood back and listened, clutching drinks they couldn't bring themselves to sip. a GoFundMe page, and this time he came with a gun. The legal system has responded, but slowly. Just a few days ago, Lindgren was apprehended in South Carolina after a brief manhunt. He was caught over 500 miles away from the scene of the crime. Traffic cameras and cooperative deputies helped track his cream-colored Buick Lucerne along Interstate 26. He didn't resist arrest. He didn't confess. He was transported back to Licking County, where he now sits in custody under a $5 million bond. There has been no trial, no plea, no public statement from his legal team, only silence, and a waiting community desperate for justice. A grand jury hearing is scheduled in the coming days. Prosecutors are expected to present evidence related to the shooting, including witness accounts, protection order violations, and Lindgren's decision to flee the state. If indicted, he could face first-degree murder charges, though the specific charges have yet to be confirmed. But in Buckeye Lake, the legal proceedings are secondary for now. The emotional trial has already begun. It plays out in conversations between friends, in parents explaining to their kids why the bar is quieter now, and in the long silences between karaoke sets. Bartenders still light a candle every night near the stage. No one says why. They don't have to. At Benjamin's home, his daughters are surrounded by family. They haven't returned to school yet. It's summer, but they're also grieving. Some days they ask questions their mother can't answer. Why did it happen? Was Daddy scared? Is he still singing in heaven? There are no easy responses. Only love, and the promise that they'll never be alone. The family has begun compiling videos and voice recordings of Benjamin. They want to preserve his presence, for themselves and for his girls. Friends have offered to help create a memorial video, something to show at community centers and karaoke events. They hope it can be part tribute, part warning, a way to keep Ben alive in memory, and to push for change before another tragedy strikes. Change is already coming. Local officials have started reviewing how protection orders are handled in the county. Law enforcement has pledged to revisit enforcement protocols, especially in domestic-related cases involving threats of violence. There's talk of mandatory check-ins for individuals under active protection orders and tighter coordination between courts and local venues. Louie's Corner House is considering new policies too. One bartender proposed a ban list for anyone named in active protection orders tied to patrons or staff. Others have asked for better security on karaoke nights. The owners are open to it. They've lost more than business. They've lost trust. At one recent karaoke event, a young man sang a slow ballad and said before stepping down, "This one's for Ben. We never met, but I feel like I knew you." The room went silent. There was no applause, just understanding. Then, one by one, people raised their glasses in his direction. That's the kind of legacy Benjamin Hawk leaves behind. A man whose kindness built bonds strong enough to outlast him. A man whose final song now lives in the voices of others. A man who didn't just perform, but connected. There's no neat ending to this chapter. Not yet. The case is still open. The grief is still fresh. The daughters are still young. The bar is still dimmer than it was. And the song, One More Light, still plays from speakers like a hymn, a reminder, a cry, a vow. The coming weeks will bring legal movement. The grand jury will decide whether Lindgren faces a formal indictment. Attorneys will begin preparing. Courtrooms will eventually fill. And one day soon a trial will begin. But justice doesn't wait for gavels. It begins now in accountability, in reform, in remembrance. And Buckeye Lake is learning that. In every bar that screens a karaoke list, in every parent who holds their child tighter, in every candle lit beside a microphone, there is reflection. There is anger. There is hope. There is the lasting echo of a man who mattered. And if there's any justice at all, Benjamin Hawk's voice won't be remembered just for